Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'd like to tell you a little bit about News Trust, and we'll go through these slides rapidly. We're a social news network, which means we're an online community of citizens and journalists that care deeply about journalism so we can make more informed decisions as citizens. And we share interesting stories with each other by rating the news based on core principles of journalism. And we provide a variety of services, and we're also unusual that we are nonprofit, unlike other services like Dig or Twitter. Our team at a glance, I'm not going to go into the details, but if you look to the right, you'll probably recognize some of the names. We're very grateful to our advisors, which include journalists, educators, and technologists who've helped us design and implement our social news network. We're also very grateful to our partners, which include media partners as well as educational partners, and most of all to the MacArthur Foundation, which has been kind enough to give us enough funding for us to be able to conduct this investigation. But some of our media partners include PBS, and we've been working actively with many of their programs, the Washington Post, and again, you'll recognize many of the names, and I'll show you a couple slides about that later. So what we do is we engage their communities as well as the community of our educational partners like University of Nevada, who's here today, to join forces with us and find great journalism. And so the challenge that we all face is to basically try to address some key problems like information overload, misinformation, mistrust, and civic apathy by providing a possible solution to each of these problems, either a news filter of top-rated news stories, news literacy tools like our review form, which help you figure out for yourself if you're dealing with good or bad information, reputation database of trusted sources, and the whole site acts as a way for people to find their voice as citizens in a thoughtful way. And the biggest problem that we see day in and day out is in our heads. We are so influenced by our pre-existing beliefs that often when we read an article, we tend to jump to conclusions. We'll see someone quoted saying something that we agree with, and we'll say, oh, that's an excellent story. Why don't I forward it to 100 of my friends? I'll put it on Twitter. I'll blog it. And often we don't take the time to look at whether or not the story is well-sourced, whether it's fair, whether it actually is based on factual information. So we're trying to re-engage people's thinking skills, but we don't do it explicitly because most of our consumers think that they don't need help. So instead what we do is we offer a news aggregation service that's a hybrid of different services that you see out there. We're not like Dig, which is just amateurs with no editors. We're not like the New York Times, which is a lot more professionals than citizens. And we're not like Google, which is largely computers, which can't tell the difference between a press release or an investigating news report. We're at the sweet spot. We're at the intersection. And we think that that's where most of the successful news organizations of the future will be, engaging citizens, professionals, and computers to come up with an interesting mix of quality news. So the homepage of our site features every week we have a different topic. This week we're looking at good journalism about journalism, great news and opinion about the future of journalism. So you'll see if you go to our site, newstrust.net, a lot of stories about that. And then we list some of our top-rated stories of the day on the homepage. You can click on any of the stories, and then that will take you to the original website. In this case, this is an NPR story, an excellent one if you haven't heard it. We open up a little review form in a pop-up window. And the review form asks you a couple questions. Is this story factual, or is it based on opinion? Is it fair, or is it taking sides? Is it informative? Did you learn something? And we find that by just asking a couple questions beyond whether or not you think it's cool, actually makes a huge difference in your ability to detect whether or not it's a quality news story, because it re-engages the critical thinking skills which are usually surrendered when we abandon ourselves to the storyteller. You can add a comment if you want, or you can notes about the journalistic quality, and in a separate field, if you have opinions about this particular topic, you can voice them as well. But we encourage you to voice your opinions in an area that's different than where your objective observations about the quality of the journals might be. Just hit the done button, and your review will get added to the rest of the reviews. Now, a lot of people actually experienced News Trust not on the News Trust site, but on the side of our partners. So the Washington Post, for example, has little NT buttons everywhere. So if you see a good article on the Washington Post and you'd like to share it with News Trust reviewers or have them review it, just click on their share button, and that will make our little pop-up window come up. Here we show the full review form, which has a few more questions. You know, is this story provide context? Is it in-depth? Is it enterprising? Most of our regular reviewers will use the full review form because it's a little bit richer, but everybody else starts with a quick review form. And you can see here, everybody's comments are listed on our review page for this particular story about, from NPR about the media in Wall Street. And one really interesting thing is that we feature our top reviewers at the top. So we have this concept of trusted reviewers that get featured more than people that we don't know much about. And both of them are journalists, Dan Kennedy and Michael Bugeja, and they're also educators. And then we have other people who are just regular citizens who get sandwiched in if, in fact, their comments are of high quality and if they're trusted reviewers. So we learn from each other by osmosis, and the citizens learn from the journalists, and the citizens can also amplify the expertise of the journalists. And you can see at a glance what we gave that story. It's a very high rating. Not only do we rate the articles, but we also keep track of our ratings for individual publications over time. So over the course of 590 reviews, Fact Check has received an outstanding 3.9 rating, which is very high. And you can see at a glance what they're good at, and also who owns them, what their political viewpoint is. So we make people more aware of the news that they consume and the sources that they get it from, the publications they get it from. We also rate the raters. So Michael Bugeja, who's featured here, is the director of the School of Journalism at the University of Iowa State University, and he's earned our trust. He's got a 4.2 average member level, so that means that every time that he rates on the site, his rating counts a lot more. So it's not egalitarian, it's a meritocracy, and the more we get to know you, the more we get to raise your member level. However, you don't have to be a professional. We have people who are just starting their careers, such as Ellen Angelotti at Poynter, who also has a high member level. And she earned it not so much, through her experience, but, through levels of transparency. And also, as soon as someone's active on the site, our staff validates them, checks that their reviews comply with our terms of service, that they're not overly partisan, that they're not overly self-serving, and that generally that they're behaving themselves and they get the concept. And as we raise someone's member level, then their ratings count a lot more. So you can see everybody starts at the site as a visitor, then they sign up and become a member. They get our free email newsletters. And then one day they say, okay, I'm going to see what it's all about. I'm going to try reviewing. If they review consistently, after about 5 or 10 reviews, they go into our validation queue. Our staff will take a close look at them. We'll verify that they're using their real name. We require real names to hold people accountable. And they may get invited to become a host if, in fact, the quality is pretty high and if they get a 3 validation rating or more. A host can host a discussion, a topic, an affinity group. And some of the best hosts are invited to become editors. So this is a very structured way to organize a community to aggregate quality information. And we've been very grateful to all of our partners who've helped us. Basically, we conduct what we call news hunts. For a period of 1 week, we'll work with, say, the Washington Post, and we'll try to find the best stories about the Bush legacy. In this particular case, Dan Frumkin, the columnist at Washington Post, asked us if we could go outside the Beltway and look at how the Bush legacy was covered by local news outlets as well as foreign outlets. And again, lots of different consumers. So they do the news hunts as community engagement. They use our widgets and buttons in order to do that. So skipping through, again, Judy Woodruff was kind enough to engage her viewers in helping find quality journalism about the U.S. economy, Tavis Smiley, and we're very active in the educational space as well. There's a lot of ways in which we can encourage the students to participate in a thoughtful way, and overall, we're delighted to be able to provide this service, which by and large helps build a public appreciation for quality journalism and helps in many other ways.